Hi everyone, it's Woody from COTA, and going to bring you a little trail wisdom today. We're going to talk today about drains and why they're needed, why they're important, and why COTA focuses on draining a trail. Water management is one of a number of different areas that we look at in trails management. Vegetation management, removing downfall, brushing for good sight lines. Water management is another one. Tread management. Maintaining the tread, and of course user management, and keeping the users where we want them to be. Of those, user management is certainly the most significant, and we'll save that for a later session, but we'll talk more about guide structures and how we manage users. But today we're going to look at water and how we manage water. Obviously it doesn't rain a lot here in Central Oregon, but it does rain, and sometimes they're hard rains. As you can see, we're standing in a low spot, and the trail, this is on Ticket to Ride, old COD, and you can see right up here that the trail's dropping down more or less kind of down fall line, and down into the low spot that I'm standing in. And as we turn in the other direction, we see that the trail is going uphill, and again more or less running up the fall line instead of running across the landscape on contour. And these fall line trails are problematic from a water management standpoint because that's exactly what water wants to do in the landscape. Naturally, water wanted to run down this hill if there's a big enough rain event that there's surface runoff. So these low spots that are in between become large sand puddles because we've got soil movement from one direction settling in here, and then movement of soil in the other direction settling in here. Now, we worked on this a couple years ago, and I reestablished these drains, I think it was last year if I remember correctly, and this is much less of a problem this year in terms of a big sand pit down at the bottom. And what happens in those sand pits is we have what's called soil loss, where water picks soil up and carries it, and then we have soil deposition, and soil deposition is when the water slows down enough that it drops out the sediment load that it's carrying with it. So we're going to walk up the hill and take a look at a drain and talk about how we can improve it, and frequency and that kind of thing. This is not overly steep, but it definitely has a pitch to it for sure. And again, it is running the true fall line, more or less. And so it's really important to drain this type of trail and get the water off. You see my tool right here. That's a really cool tool. It breaks down and goes in your pack. That's called a Trail Boss tool. COTA owns a number of these, and we're getting ready to buy more. They break down into small sections, and then the head, and then you can throw that in your pack. So these are perfect for riding your bike in and working on some drains, cleaning out some drains. So the first thing on drains is the location, where to drain, and then also how frequent. And on something like this, you probably are going to need a drain every 100 feet or less, just because of the steepness that is here, and there's no side slope or out slope of a trail like it would have if it's running on contour to get water off. You can see the trail is cupped just a little bit, not a lot, but it is cupped, meaning that the center portion of the tread is lower than the rest of the landscape, and that is a combination of soil compaction through use and then also water carrying some sediment away. So draining this is pretty important. You can see this is a very large drain here. It needs a little bit of shaping, but it's actually functioning quite well. Big, good drains, are big. So there's a couple different components to a drain. One is this first piece, and that is the tread dip. And as it sounds, it's a dip. And then there is the leadoff ditch where the water is going to go. So that's off to our right. You can see that currently has some pine needles and pine cones in it, which is okay. And then there is a tread crest, and the tool is actually sitting on top of the tread crest, and you can see there's a slight rise right here. When rolling grade dips are built well, they are a bike length long in the tread dip, and then the tread crest is not abrupt. It rolls really nicely, but if you have the tread dip at a bike length, so the length of your wheelbase long, it rolls really nicely. It doesn't pitch or throw a beginner rider. A good rider is likely to compress their suspension and use the tread crest as a little bit of a pop or a jump. These should be outsloped heading into our leadoff ditch. Instead of being flat, they should, have a pitch to them that already wants to direct water in that way. And then just cleaning these drains out from time to time is sort of the key to long-term longevity of these better built drains. We see a lot of drains that the leadoff ditch is, maybe a shovel width wide, and that's just too small. Those are not going to last for very long at all. So let's take a look up trail and see how far up we have to go before we find our next drain. And again, you can see this is a little bit below grade, nothing egregious, but a little bit below grade. And I know that we worked on this a couple of years ago for one of our fall projects. And we added this little curvature into the trail by placing this stump right here. We dug a big hole, we went out and found that and brought it over, and so it looks natural, but it was not there. That is not where the tree was growing. And we did that for a couple of reasons. One, to force a little bit of curvature into this trail. Previously the trail was running right here. It's a little bit easier to get water off by adding that slight curvature into the trail, slight meander. It creates a little bit of a flat spot right here, which is going to make it easier for us to get that water off. We can see a drain right here with a leadoff ditch. Someone has put a guide structure in the form of that cedar log across. Sometimes that's okay visually. When we go back up the trail, we can see that that's telling us to go to the left, and that's okay. I don't like to see that all the time. I don't like to see that overly used. And if you are going to do that, you need to put, a good material, not something that's going to collapse in a short period of time. This one could use a little bit of cleaning out. I cleaned this one out last year, if I remember correctly. So I am going to redress this up a little bit, just clean out that leadoff ditch a little bit better, maybe exaggerate the dip a little bit more, and taking that dip down, that's going to mean that we're going to have a little bit more of a tread crest. But this one is actually functioning pretty well, but I'm going to work on it a little bit here today. And then as we go up, we will see another one. So we're looking at about 30-40 feet. And this one is pretty minor. This one certainly could use a little bit more work, so I'm going to work on that one as well. And as we go on up, I know the spacing between those two was about 30 or 40 feet. So how steep the trail is definitely going to help determine frequency. And as we go up, this is another place which I worked on with the machine years ago, and this really was the start or the root of the problem, in that we have a lot of impervious surface here in the form of an old road bed. So as we look where there's vegetation, there is not a lot of surface runoff, but on a road, it doesn't have vegetation on it, so it does have a lot of runoff. That was coming in the direction of us where we're standing right now, and it was turning this corner and dropping down onto that section of trail. So the idea here was to make sure that we got water continuing to run down the roadbed and not turning and running down our trail. So always work uphill from where you are. If you have a big sand puddle, you can't just go drain that sand puddle. You got to work uphill from that sand puddle and solve the real problem. The real problem is that you've got soil movement, which means that you don't have enough water management. The frequency of drains is not enough.